The RMS Titanic, a marvel of human engineering, set sail as a symbol of hope and ambition. But beneath its glittering surface lay a tale of love, tragedy, and the unyielding power of the sea. This is the story of two souls who found each other amidst the chaos, only to be tested by the unforgiving waves of fate. The RMS Titanic, a marvel of human engineering, set sail as a symbol of hope and ambition. But beneath its glittering surface lay a tale of love, tragedy, and the unyielding power of the sea. This is the story of two souls who found each other amidst the chaos, only to be tested by the unforgiving waves of fate. The grand staircase of the Titanic gleamed under the glow of crystal chandeliers, its polished oak banisters reflecting the elegance of the ship's first-class passengers. Among them was Eleanor Hartwell, a young woman of privilege traveling with her family to New York. Her father, a wealthy industrialist, had secured their passage on the maiden voyage, a journey meant to solidify business connections across the Atlantic. Eleanor, however, felt suffocated by the expectations placed upon her. She longed for freedom, for a life beyond the confines of societal norms. On the other side of the ship, in the bustling third-class quarters, James Callahan adjusted his cap and glanced at the ticket in his hand. A skilled carpenter from Belfast, he had been hired to assist with maintenance during the voyage. For James, the Titanic represented opportunity, a chance to start anew in America, far from the hardships of his past. Though he was surrounded by the laughter and chatter of fellow passengers, he often found himself lost in thought, dreaming of a future he could scarcely imagine. Their worlds collided one afternoon on the ship's deck. Eleanor had slipped away from her family, seeking solace in the crisp sea air. The wind tugged at her hat, and as she reached to secure it, a gust sent it tumbling toward the railing. James, passing by, caught it just before it could escape into the ocean. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. He handed her the hat with a shy smile, and she thanked him, her voice soft but sincere. From that moment, a quiet connection began to form. Eleanor found herself drawn to James's humility and the quiet strength in his demeanor. James, in turn, was captivated by Eleanor's kindness and the way she seemed to see beyond his rough exterior. They began to meet in secret, stealing moments on the ship's quieter decks, away from prying eyes. Eleanor would share stories of her sheltered life, her dreams of painting, and traveling the world. James spoke of his childhood in Ireland, his love for woodworking, and his hopes for a better future. Their conversations were a balm for both of them, a respite from the pressures they carried. Eleanor felt alive in a way she never had before, her heart awakening to the possibilities of a life lived on her own terms. James, too, found himself daring to dream of a future he had once thought impossible. Yet, they both knew their time together was fleeting. The Titanic was a world unto itself, but it was also a fleeting moment in time, bound for a destination that would inevitably pull them apart. As the days passed, their bond deepened. They laughed together under the stars, their voices carried away by the wind. They shared quiet moments, watching the endless expanse of the Atlantic, the horizon stretching endlessly before them. But even as their connection grew, the weight of their circumstances loomed. Eleanor's family would never approve of her association with a man like James, and James knew that their worlds were too different to coexist beyond the confines of the ship. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Eleanor turned to James. "What happens when we reach New York?" she asked, her voice trembling with unspoken fear. James hesitated, his heart heavy. "I don't know," he admitted. "But no matter what happens, I'll never forget this. I'll never forget you." Their words hung in the air, a bittersweet acknowledgement of the inevitable. Yet, in that moment, they chose to hold on to the present, to the fragile beauty of what they had found. For now, the Titanic was their world, a place where love could exist outside the boundaries of class and expectation. But the sea, vast and unpredictable, held secrets of its own, and the journey ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. As the ship sailed onward, Cutting through the dark waters of the Atlantic, Eleanor and James clung to the hope that their love could defy the odds. Little did they know that the greatest challenge lay not in the distance between their worlds, but in the tempest that awaited them on the horizon. The Titanic, a symbol of human ambition, would soon become a testament to the fragility of life and the enduring power of love. And for Eleanor and James, the echoes of their story would ripple through time, a reminder of the lives intertwined and the hearts forever changed by the voyage of the unsinkable ship. The days aboard the Titanic passed in a blur of stolen moments and whispered promises. Eleanor and James continued to meet in secret, their connection growing stronger with each passing hour. The ship, with its grandeur and opulence, became a backdrop to their blossoming romance, a world where the boundaries of class and expectation seemed to fade, if only for a while. Yet, beneath the surface of their newfound happiness, the weight of reality lingered, a constant reminder that their time together was finite. Eleanor's family remained oblivious to her clandestine meetings, their attention consumed by the social obligations of first-class travel. Her mother, a woman of strict propriety, often reminded Eleanor of the importance of maintaining their family's reputation. "You must remember who you are," she would say, her tone firm but not unkind. Eleanor would nod, her heart heavy with the knowledge that her mother's words were not just a reminder but a warning. The world they inhabited left little room for deviation, and Eleanor knew that her feelings for James would be seen as nothing short of scandalous. James, too, felt the weight of their circumstances. Though he cherished every moment with Eleanor, he couldn't shake the feeling that their love was a fleeting dream, one that would dissolve the moment the ship reached New York. He had seen the way the first-class passengers looked at him, their glances a mixture of curiosity and disdain. He knew that to them, he was invisible, a mere worker meant to serve and remain unseen. Yet, with Eleanor, he felt seen in a way he never had before. Her laughter, her kindness, the way she listened to him as though his words mattered, it was a gift he treasured, even as he feared it could never last. One evening, as the ship glided through the calm waters of the Atlantic, Eleanor and James found themselves alone on the stern deck. The sky was a tapestry of stars, their light reflecting on the water below. Eleanor leaned against the railing, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Do you ever wonder what's out there?" she asked, her voice soft. James stood beside her, his hands resting on the cool metal. "Every day," he replied. "I think about all the places I've never seen, all the things I've never done. But being here with you, it makes me feel like anything is possible." Eleanor turned to him, her eyes searching his. "What if we didn't have to say goodbye?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and fear. James hesitated, his heart aching at the thought of losing her. "I want that more than anything," he admitted. "But your family, my place, it's not that simple." Eleanor reached for his hand, her touch warm against his. "Nothing worth having ever is," she said. "We could find a way. We could start over, somewhere no one knows us." Her words hung in the air, a fragile hope that neither of them dared to fully embrace. They both knew the challenges they would face, the obstacles that stood in their way. Yet, in that moment, they allowed themselves to dream, to imagine a future where their love could thrive beyond the confines of the ship. It was a dangerous dream, one that threatened to unravel the lives they had known, but it was also a beacon of light in the darkness, a promise of something more. As the days went on, their bond deepened, their conversations shifting from dreams of the future to the realities of their past. Eleanor confided in James about the pressures she faced, the expectations that had always dictated her life. She spoke of her love for art, a passion she had been forced to set aside in favor of more suitable pursuits. James, in turn, shared stories of his childhood in Ireland, the struggles his family had endured, and the determination that had driven him to seek a better life. Their shared vulnerabilities brought them closer, their love rooted in a mutual understanding of the challenges they each faced. But even as their connection grew, the world around them remained unchanged. The Titanic continued its journey, its passengers oblivious to the quiet revolution taking place in the hearts of two souls from different worlds. Eleanor and James knew that their time together was running out, that the ship's arrival in New York would bring with it a reckoning they could not avoid. Yet, they clung to the hope that their love could defy the odds, that they could find a way to bridge the gap between their worlds. One night, as they stood together under the stars, James turned to Eleanor, his expression serious. "No matter what happens," he said, "I want you to know that you've changed my life. You've shown me that there's more to this world than I ever imagined." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, her heart aching at the thought of losing him. "You've changed me too," she whispered. "I don't want to say goodbye." Their words were a testament to the depth of their feelings, a declaration of love that transcended the boundaries of class and circumstance. Yet, even as they spoke, the ship sailed ever closer to its destination, the future looming like a storm on the horizon. For Eleanor and James, the journey was far from over, but the challenges ahead would test their love in ways they could not yet imagine. The Titanic, a symbol of human ambition and ingenuity, would soon become a crucible, forging their bond in the fires of adversity. And as the stars above bore witness to their love, the echoes of their story began to take shape, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring power of the human heart. The night was calm, the air crisp and still as the Titanic cut through the dark waters of the Atlantic. Eleanor and James stood together on the deck, their hands intertwined, the stars above casting a soft glow on their faces. The ship's engines hummed steadily, a reassuring sound that masked the tension building beneath the surface. Neither of them could have known that this would be their last moment of peace, that the hours ahead would change their lives forever. It began with a faint shudder, a subtle tremor that rippled through the ship. At first, it was easy to dismiss, a minor disturbance, perhaps a shift in the engine's rhythm. But as the moments passed, the tremor grew into a jarring impact, the sound of grinding metal echoing through the hull. James, attuned to the workings of the ship, felt his heart sink. "Something's wrong," he said, his voice tight with concern. Eleanor gripped his hand tighter, her eyes wide with fear. "What is it?" she asked, though deep down, she already knew. The ship's crew sprang into action, their shouts cutting through the night as passengers began to stir. James, torn between his duty and his desire to protect Eleanor, hesitated for only a moment before making his decision. "Stay here," he said, his voice firm. "I need to find out what's happening." Eleanor shook her head, her determination matching his. "I'm not leaving your side," she said. "Whatever happens, we face it together." They moved through the growing chaos, the once elegant halls of the Titanic now filled with confusion and fear. Passengers in nightclothes spilled out of their cabins, their faces pale with shock. The crew worked frantically to maintain order, but the truth was undeniable. The ship had struck an iceberg, and the damage was severe. James, with his knowledge of the ship's construction, understood the gravity of the situation. "We need to get to the lifeboats," he said, his voice urgent. "Now." Eleanor's heart raced as they made their way to the upper decks, the reality of their situation sinking in. The lifeboats were being prepared, but there were far too few for the number of passengers on board. Panic began to spread as people realized the danger they were in. James kept a firm grip on Eleanor's hand, his presence a steady anchor amidst the turmoil. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. As they reached the boat deck, the scene was one of desperation. Women and children were being ushered toward the lifeboats, their faces etched with fear. James knew that as a third-class passenger, his chances of securing a place were slim, but he was determined to ensure Eleanor's safety. "You need to get on a boat," he said, his voice firm. Eleanor shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I won't leave you," she said. "I can't." James cupped her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. "You have to," he said, his voice breaking. "This isn't about us anymore. It's about survival. Please, Eleanor, do this for me." Her heart ached at his words, the weight of their situation crushing her. She wanted to argue, to refuse, but the look in his eyes silenced her. "Promise me you'll find a way," she whispered. "Promise me you'll survive." James nodded, though he knew the odds were against him. "I promise," he said, though the words felt hollow. He helped her into a lifeboat, his hands lingering on hers for a moment before he stepped back. The boat was lowered into the water, the distance between them growing with each passing second. Eleanor's eyes never left his, her heart breaking as the reality of their separation set in. As the lifeboats drifted away from the ship, the Titanic began to tilt, its bow sinking deeper into the water. The once majestic vessel was now a scene of devastation, its decks crowded with desperate souls. James moved through the chaos, his mind focused on one goal: survival. He knew that staying on the ship was a death sentence, but the lifeboats were gone, and the icy waters below offered little hope. The ship's final moments were a blur of noise and motion, the screams of the passengers mingling with the groaning of the metal as the Titanic began to break apart. James found himself clinging to a piece of debris, the cold water numbing his body as he struggled to stay afloat. Around him, the ocean was filled with the cries of the dying, a haunting chorus that would stay with him for the rest of his life. In the distance, he could see the lifeboats, their lights flickering like stars on the water. He thought of Eleanor, hoping she was safe, that she had found a way to survive. The cold seeped into his bones, his strength fading with each passing moment. But as he clung to the debris, his mind filled with memories of their time together, the laughter, the quiet moments, the love they had shared. It was enough to keep him going, to give him the strength to hold on. The night stretched on, the darkness broken only by the faint light of the stars. James's body grew weaker, his thoughts drifting as the cold took its toll. But even as he felt himself slipping away, he held on to the hope that Eleanor had made it, that their love had not been in vain. The Titanic, a symbol of human ambition and hubris, had become a testament to the fragility of life. But for James and Eleanor, it was also a reminder of the enduring power of love, a force that could transcend even the darkest of nights. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon, casting a pale glow on the icy waters of the Atlantic. The Carpathia, a ship that had raced to the scene of the disaster, moved slowly through the debris field, its crew scanning the water for survivors. Among the lifeboats, Eleanor sat huddled beneath a blanket, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The night had been endless, filled with the sounds of crying and the occasional distant shout. She had barely slept, her mind consumed by thoughts of James and the terror they had endured. As the Carpathia's crew began to bring survivors aboard, Eleanor's heart pounded with a mix of hope and dread. She scanned the faces of those rescued, searching for any sign of James. Each time she saw someone who resembled him, her breath caught, only for her hope to be dashed when it wasn't him. The hours passed in a blur of waiting and praying, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. When the last of the lifeboats had been emptied and the final survivors brought aboard, Eleanor's hope began to fade. She approached one of the crew members, her voice trembling as she asked if there were any more survivors. The man's expression was grim as he shook his head. "We've done all we can," he said gently. "I'm sorry." The words hit her like a blow, her knees buckling as the reality set in. James was gone. The man who had shown her a world beyond the confines of her privileged life, who had made her believe in the possibility of a different future, was lost to the sea. She sank to the deck, her tears falling freely as the weight of her grief overwhelmed her. The days that followed were a haze of numbness and sorrow. Eleanor moved through the motions of survival, her heart heavy with loss. The other survivors spoke in hushed tones of the tragedy, their voices filled with disbelief and sorrow. The Titanic, once a symbol of human achievement, had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragility of life and the hubris of man. When the Carpathia finally reached New York, the city was in mourning. Crowds gathered at the docks, their faces somber as they watched the survivors disembark. Reporters clamored for stories, their questions intrusive and relentless. Eleanor avoided them, her grief too raw to share with strangers. She was met by her family, their relief at her survival tempered by the knowledge of all that had been lost. In the weeks that followed, Eleanor struggled to adjust to a life without James. The world she had returned to felt foreign, its comforts and privileges now hollow in the absence of the man who had shown her their emptiness. She found herself drawn to the waterfront, the sound of the waves a bittersweet reminder of the love she had found and lost. She would sit for hours, staring out at the ocean, her mind filled with memories of their time together. One day, as she walked along the shore, she noticed a small wooden figure washed up on the sand. She picked it up, her breath catching as she recognized James's handiwork. It was a carving of a bird, its wings outstretched as if in flight. Tears filled her eyes as she clutched it to her chest, the weight of her grief mingling with a strange sense of comfort. It was as if James had sent her a message, a reminder that their love would always be a part of her. In the years that followed, Eleanor carried James's memory with her, a quiet presence that shaped her life in ways she could never have imagined. She pursued her passion for art, her paintings filled with the colors and emotions of their time together. She became an advocate for social change, using her privilege to fight for those who, like James, had been overlooked by society. Her life was a testament to the love they had shared, a legacy that honored his memory and the lessons he had taught her. The Titanic became a symbol of many things: hubris, tragedy, the fragility of human life. But for Eleanor, it was also a reminder of the power of love, a force that could transcend even the darkest of nights. Though James was gone, his presence lingered in the echoes of their story, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring strength of the human heart. As the years passed, the world moved on, the tragedy of the Titanic fading into history. But for Eleanor, the memories remained, a quiet undercurrent that shaped her life and the lives of those she touched. And in the quiet moments, when the world was still, she would take out the wooden bird, its wings a symbol of the love that had carried her through the storm. It was a reminder that even in the face of loss, there was hope, and that the echoes of love could endure, even in the deepest waters of the Atlantic. The years rolled on, each one carrying Eleanor further from the night that had changed her life forever. Yet, the memory of James never faded. It lingered in the quiet moments, in the sound of the ocean, in the brushstrokes of her paintings. She had built a life of purpose, one that honored the love they had shared and the lessons he had taught her. But as time passed, she often found herself reflecting on the fragility of life and the resilience of the human spirit. One autumn evening, many years after the Titanic's sinking, Eleanor stood on the deck of a small ship, her silver hair catching the light of the setting sun. She had returned to the Atlantic, not out of sorrow, but out of a desire to make peace with the past. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, its surface calm and unyielding. She clutched the wooden bird James had carved, its edges worn smooth from years of handling. It had become a talisman, a symbol of the love that had shaped her life. As the ship sailed through the waters where the Titanic had met its fate, Eleanor felt a strange sense of closure. The weight of her grief had softened over time, replaced by a quiet gratitude for the moments they had shared. She had come to understand that love, even when lost, could leave an indelible mark, shaping the course of a life in ways both seen and unseen. James had given her more than just memories. He had given her the courage to live authentically, to embrace the world with an open heart. The crew of the ship, aware of her connection to the Titanic, had arranged a small ceremony to honor those who had been lost. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Eleanor stood at the railing, the wooden bird in her hand. She closed her eyes, letting the sound of the waves fill her ears. In her mind, she could see James's face, his smile, the way his eyes had lit up when he spoke of his dreams. She whispered a quiet thank you, her words carried away by the wind. As she opened her eyes, she noticed a young couple standing nearby, their hands intertwined. They were laughing, their faces filled with the kind of joy that comes from being truly present in the moment. Eleanor smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. The world had moved on, as it always does, but the echoes of love remained, passed down through the generations, a reminder of what it meant to truly live. That night, as the ship sailed on, Eleanor sat in her cabin, a journal open on her lap. She had spent years capturing her thoughts and memories, her words a testament to the life she had built. She picked up her pen and began to write, her hand moving steadily across the page. She wrote of James, of the Titanic, of the lessons she had learned, and the love that had carried her through. She wrote of the beauty of life, even in the face of loss, and the importance of cherishing every moment. When she finished, she set the pen down and leaned back in her chair, a sense of fulfillment washing over her. She had come full circle, returning to the place where her journey had begun, not to dwell on the past, but to honor it. The wooden bird sat on the table beside her, its wings still outstretched, a symbol of hope and resilience. The next morning, as the ship approached the harbor, Eleanor stood on the deck, the wooden bird clutched in her hand. She had decided it was time to let go, not of the memories, but of the need to hold onto the physical reminder of James. She walked to the railing and held the bird out over the water, her heart steady. "Thank you," she whispered once more, her voice soft but sure. She released the bird, watching as it fell toward the water, its wings catching the light before it disappeared beneath the waves. As the ship docked, Eleanor felt a sense of lightness, as though a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had been lifted. She stepped onto the shore, her eyes scanning the horizon one last time. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, its surface shimmering in the sunlight. She smiled, a quiet sense of peace settling over her. The journey had been long, filled with both joy and sorrow, but she had emerged stronger, her heart full of gratitude for the love she had known. The echoes of the Titanic story would always remain, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of love. But for Eleanor, the story had come to a close, not with an ending, but with a new beginning. She turned away from the water, her steps steady as she walked toward the life she had built, a life shaped by love, loss, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. And as she disappeared into the bustling streets of the city, the ocean whispered its farewell, its waves carrying the echoes of her story out to sea, where they would remain, a testament to the lives intertwined and the hearts forever changed by the voyage of the unsinkable ship.